You're listening to the Sketchnote Army podcast. I'm your host, Mike Rohde, the author of the Sketchnote Handbook and the Sketchnote Workbook. And this is the podcast where I chat with sketchnoters and visual thinkers and try to understand what makes them tick. Hey, are you looking for the ideal sketchbook for your sketchnoting practice? The Sketchnote Idea Book is the sketchbook designed for sketchnoters. Equipped with no bleed, no show-through paper, you can take almost any marker or pen you can throw at it. Get 10% off with code ARMY at airship.store. Hey everyone, it's Mike, and I'm here with my friend Nishant Jain. Nishant, it's so good to have you on the show.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, we've been talking for not quite a year, probably 6 months, but we've been aware of each other longer. I've been a subscriber to your Sneaky Artist Substack for a while. Mm-hmm. And I think our meeting story was we were at, what's the name of the event that John Muir Laws puts on? The Wild Wonder event.
Yeah, Wild Wonder Conference.
And I think, was I doing something or you were doing something? And I said, oh, look, it's Nishant Jain. And you're like, what? And you knew who I was. It was a funny moment.
I think it was your talk. And
okay.
I was curious about sketchnoting, and so I jumped into it.
Okay, got it. And for those who are not aware, Wild Wonder is an amazing organization. You can go back. I'll put a link into the John Muir Laws interview from years ago. He's a super fascinating guy. Mm-hmm. If you listen to that podcast, you'll want to grab a sketchbook and a pen and go outside and sketch birds or something. Seriously, he's a very, very exciting and inspiring person. Mm-hmm. And they run a workshop every year, I think around September. And they just have amazing people, and you can learn so much, and it's worth going to. So after that sponsorship by Wild Wonder Foundation, which I'm happy with sponsoring because they're great. So that's how we met, and then we just started connecting and chatting. And you were a great advisor to me in my Sketchnote Lab startup. You gave me a lot of mindset around the way you handle your Substack, which helped me a lot. That really accelerated the way that worked, and I think the way I think about it, which has been encouraging. So thank you for that.
I'm glad to hear that.
So I think you do a lot of things. So I think before I assume what you do, because I don't even know if I know, tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. Okay. So I'm Nishant, and I gave myself this job title a few years ago of Sneaky Artist. It turns out you're allowed to make up job titles completely from scratch. Oh, yeah. I was delighted to discover this, but I'm not just an artist, although art has become my primary medium of expression. I'm a writer. I'm also a podcaster. And as one has to be in this independent career climate, you cannot just be one thing. Everybody is multi-hyphenate. So as an artist, what I do, it's a practice that I did not think would make me an artist. I did not start this practice in order to become an artist. I just did it as a distraction technique. I just did it as a way to maybe learn to draw a little better. I was trying to be a cartoonist, and I was trying to be a writer. And before all of this, I was an engineer. So I completed a master's degree. I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering. I've worked on race cars. I've worked on human prosthetics. And then I started a PhD program in neuroscience to become a neuroscientist working with stroke patients. But through this whole journey of education, I really, if you asked me, I would have said what I want to be is a writer. All I wanted to be was a writer. That's funny. I wanted to do was write political satire, write humor. And that's what I was doing every evening. I would do my studies, I would do my assignments and my projects. And then for an hour or 2 hours, whatever time I'd get, I'd be writing stories. I wrote scripts for stand-up comedy. I tried open mic stand-up comedy. I wrote for television shows in India. I wrote a blog. I had a web comic of political humor for years. And I tried to express myself with everything that I could. And for someone like me who isn't educated in these things, who isn't in the network of these things, the internet was a big boon. Immediately, I started putting my work online, first as a blog, and then when Facebook came along, then Facebook, and then images became a thing on Facebook, so I pivoted to comics. So I was very naturally agile around the medium of expression for me, very quickly, it became that you have an idea, and then that idea can be expressed in lots of different ways. And sometimes it is dependent on you to figure out what is the best medium to express this idea. Some things are better as a joke, some things are better as a comic, and some things are better as short stories. So quickly, this became something for me to figure out, and I became very excited by being able to do this as well. The freedom of the internet to let us express ourselves in any way we want and hopefully build an audience. So after a couple of years into my PhD program, I finally decided to commit to a life of creativity. I quit my PhD program. I moved in with my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and I started writing this big novel that was inside my head. And after years of writing and writing, it was such an amazing rush to be able to do it full time. But I would get about 30% into it and I would hit a block. And so I would start again from zero, and then again 30% and a block. And I wrote 5 drafts this way. The last draft I wrote by hand with a fountain pen, thinking maybe just writing by hand will somehow unlock something special. And I kept hitting this block. And I was so frustrated and I was so mad at myself, and I felt so many different feelings that there was this one day that I just grabbed my notebook and I grabbed my pen and I went out to a cafe, and I decided that I was just done with words, and words were just not working for me and I need to spend some time away from them. So I got a coffee and I started observing these people around me. And I was an immigrant in North America. I was in Chicago then, and I'm fascinated by Chicago is my favorite city in the world. And I was fascinated by the people around me. These, just the way people live their lives in America is so different from everywhere else. So I started observing them. I gave myself this room to observe them because I needed to distract myself. And I started making quick drawings of them. The drawings were quick because A, I am naturally impatient, and B, I didn't know when they would leave. I thought they might just get up and go, so I need to draw very quickly. And finally, because I was very self-conscious of doing this very strange thing, I was trying to look at people and draw them, and I didn't want anybody to see me do this funny thing. So I thought I'll be very secretive about it. I'll keep the book in the palm of my hand and I'll draw very quickly, and nobody will see me do this weird, quote unquote, weird thing. This became the origin of sneaky art. I started calling it sneaky art because I was being sneaky and trying to get away with a sketch, an embarrassing sketch that wasn't very good and that you're not supposed to do. Like, it just felt wrong. Like, what a strange thing to want to do as an adult. And I realized this is a lot of fun. I finished a drawing in an hour, and it didn't look all that great, but I felt so proud of it because it just felt like a wholesome 1 hour had been spent observing and translating, and it just felt good. So I came back to do it the next day and the next day and the next day. And before I knew it, I was on this journey to discover new things, to see new people. I would go to different parts of Chicago, different neighborhoods, and just sit in new cafes, watch these people, and try to come away with something new. Did I do something today that I didn't do yesterday? Am I able to draw something today that I wasn't able to draw yesterday? And it began with this humble idea that I just want to be able to maybe draw slightly better comics. Maybe I'll learn how to draw nice backdrops and settings and, make a person look like a person. My comic so far for 5 years, I'd been published in newspapers and things, but still it was a stick figure comic because I just didn't know how to draw any better. So my goal with this was that maybe I'll learn to draw a little bit better and make my comics richer. But it became its own thing. Like, it just, as a person who loves words, as a person who finds so much inspiration in books and novels and stories and humor, suddenly I found that just the art, just the lines and the shapes were saying things that I had been having a lot of trouble saying for the past few years, especially in the political climate that India was going through at that time and is now right in the middle of a right-wing authoritarian government, not really leaving a lot of space for dissent and humor. A lot of people were coming under a lot of abuse on social media platforms for expressing views against the ruling party. And I felt really disheartened by this situation. I took it very hard. I wasn't thick-skinned enough. Like, I got a lot of negative opinions from a lot of people, some of whom I knew personally, and it just made me feel like there's something here that's missing. Like, I'm trying to say something, but when I say it to them, they hear something else entirely. And I think we are able to see this now. The different realities people live in based on their spot on the political spectrum. And it made me feel that words are perhaps not very useful
Mm.
because they don't get the point across. And I think inside my heart, I was looking for something to say, something to express that could be just universally true, that wasn't up for debate, that couldn't be misinterpreted. And so now looking back at it, I think the journey with art was a journey to find something that is universally true. When I think about my tiny people drawings now and I talk to people about what my art is, I tell them this: it's a way to take away the differences between people and show you the universality of our human existence. I was an immigrant in North America. I was feeling really out of place as a brown guy with a beard in that particular situation in those years. And for me to feel like this place can be home needed me to find these correlations between people. How are they similar to me, not how they are
Mm.
dissimilar to me?
Hmm.
And differences are very surface level, but this journey with art and drawing tiny people was a journey to peel away these surface differences, take away the recognizability that makes them uniquely the person that I'm not, and come to that level at which I can relate with them as a human, human to human. And that's what the art today is. Words made a comeback into my journey very soon because I love to write, and I started writing a newsletter when Instagram became started to feel exploitative and poisonous and algorithmically driven. It started to feel like I'm being manipulated, and this is not a good way have a to engage with people who like your work. So I started writing a newsletter. And so now today I can say that I'm a writer as well, because every week I put out a newsletter to share what I see in my world, the drawings I make of it, what it makes me think about, the things I read, the things I feel. And those are the things I write today. I also have a podcast. I make the Sneaky Art podcast, in which I speak to other people who are obsessed with drawing from observation, from walking around their world and looking at and sitting in street corners and drawing into sketchbooks. And that's what we do. We talk about this on the Sneaky Art podcast. So these are the things I do. As of this year, I'm also a published author. We'll talk
Yep.
about that a little later, I'm sure. But yeah, like it's been a journey of since I quit my PhD program, I promised myself that I would do everything that I wanted to do, and I would never narrow my path.
Mm.
And that's the journey I'm on. It's a journey of curiosity. It's not directed by specific job titles. It's directed by what feels like fun and what I want to explore.
And I'm sure, just like you talked about writing the book and you get stuck at this 30% mark, you know, if you're doing things as an experimental, sounds to me like you're experimenting. If you did something and it just didn't feel right or it just wasn't working, you would just leave it behind and move to the next experiment until you get a set of experiments that continue to work, right? I sort of think things that way.
Yeah, I think drawing comics brings that home really, because to try to draw a weekly or a bi-weekly comic means you generate ideas every moment of the day.
Right.
And maybe 1% of those ideas you take to completion. So you have to get into the habit of having an idea, loving it, trying to develop it, and then it doesn't work and you have to put it aside and you have to do
Yeah.
something else. So this and at first when you start, of course it feels like a loss, like I got this, I have to finish it. But then I think over time, the more you do it, you get into this cycle of knowing that no good idea is ever lost. Everything
Hmm.
stays in the back burner of your mind, and maybe in a few years or a few months I'll be in a space to revisit it. It'll occur to me again and I'll see it from a different perspective and it'll work. So I think one of the boons of drawing comics for me and writing short stories was that no idea in itself is so precious and nothing is ever lost.
That's a great way to think about it. I think this just happened to be last week in a project I did 2.5, 3 years ago, an interface design. And someone came with a request and it was exactly, I mean, that wasn't exactly that, but it was mostly based on what I'd done. So
Right.
that thing that I did 2.5 years ago that went nowhere suddenly is revived and coming back to life again. So I've seen this in many other areas too.
Yeah.
I always wonder, like, sometimes the ideas are good, but maybe their
Mhm.
timing is wrong, right? Like you have to wait for the time
Absolutely.
to be right. Yeah.
So true. Sometimes the timing is wrong. Sometimes the world isn't ready. Sometimes you're
Yeah.
not ready. And one or the other needs to shift a little bit. And sometimes that's just about waiting.
Well, the other thing you didn't mention is you're also doing a course. So you
Mhm.
teach you do this tiny people drawing, and you're
Yeah,
teaching that in a course, which
yeah.
I see on social media, probably because I'm following you and like your stuff. But
Mhm.
um, that looks really interesting too. And why don't you talk a little bit about that, and we'll work backwards from that into the book that you're writing, because I
Sure.
feel like there's sort of two halves of the same coin or something, or I don't know how
In
you
a
would.
sense, yeah.
Yeah.
The book is a larger is a larger has a larger ambit, but the course is quite focused on something that I am most popular for. The reason why my Instagram account blew up one day is that people love to see me draw these tiny people.
Yeah.
So how it began is that firstly, I draw tiny people, like I told you, because I'm fascinated by people. I love to see what people do. And as a new person in a new world, I was trying to figure out how I should fit in. How do
Hmm.
I know how to live here? How to make these public spaces my space as well? How to give myself permission to enjoy this cafe, this park? And the way for me was to watch what other people do, and the way to allow myself to watch other people was to draw.
Yeah.
So I although I was super hesitant about taking on this role as an instructor, a bit of imposter syndrome kicks in. Like I feel like I'm not equipped. Surely I'm not qualified to be telling other people what to do. I think what worked is knowing that I have an experience to share. And some people, sometimes, you don't need to hear from someone who necessarily knows a lot more than you or is somehow the best at it, but just somebody who can give you permission to think a certain way. And I think of my role as a teacher to be that of a facilitator. I'm here to point the way to some interesting things, and maybe people find something to do from it. So I did a bunch of Zoom workshops, and I did a lot of in-person workshops, and all of them are basically 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and people can join you if they're physically near you, or people can join you if that time zone works out for them.
Right.
And as my audience started to grow and the number of people who wanted to learn from me started to grow, I realized this workshop business is not really doing them enough service. So I designed a course because a course is entirely self-paced. I get to make it at to the level of depth that I want. There is over 7 hours of content in this
Mm,
course, more than 50 different videos. I get to take people outside. I've recorded myself drawing and talking inside a cafe, at a
that's cool.
street corner, on a train, things I can't do for a workshop that I do.
Right.
And everybody around the world is able to buy it and then watch it at their comfort, watch it at their choice of speed, at their choice of day, of week, and hour, and follow along and consume it the way they want. So there's a lot of consent and mutual respect in this whole setup, which I'm really appreciating. I have the freedom and they have all the freedom to do it how they want. So this course has been a real blessing for me, because this is a course specifically about how to draw tiny people. I think everybody should be in the business of tiny people drawing, because it is, I think one of the biggest crimes of our modern technology in our lives is it's put us into little bubbles. We
Hmm.
look at our little devices, we listen to our music, and we stay in this sensory bubble that
Yeah.
insulates us from our world. We don't interact with our world so much. And everybody's like this. You go on a bus, and everybody on the bus is on their phones inside their own little cocoon,
Hmm.
not interacting with each other, not looking at each other. And I think it makes us more disconnected, and it makes for a lonelier world if we are this way. So, a sketchbook habit is a way to perhaps look at other people, to find commonalities, to perhaps understand how rich and beautiful our world is. And one of the reasons I wanted to make this course is I want other people to see that around you there is so much diverse human life, so much happening at all times of the day, and if you look, you will always find something beautiful. So now we have a little community, hundreds of participants sharing the tiny people they find in their corner of the world. Every morning I wake up and I see drawings of tiny people from Hong Kong, from London, from
Cool.
Australia, from somewhere in Europe, somewhere in South America. It's absolutely rich and beautiful. And you know what we're seeing? We're seeing that no matter where you go, you find humanity is still the same. A tiny person in Brazil having coffee is the same as a tiny person in the UK having
Hmm.
coffee. And there's something beautiful about that. And there's something beautiful that someone was able to share it with us. And so it's been a real delight to be able to make a course and have people learn from me and see what they come up with.
I think there's something you mentioned in there at the outset, which is you had a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like, who am I to teach? I thought when I was asked to write a book about sketchnote, like, why am I the right person to write about this? And the thing that brought me around was thinking, okay, and anytime I teach anything, it's like I may not be the expert on sketchnote layouts, but I have a way that I do it that works for me that I could share with you, right?
Right.
That sort of brings it down to more local, right? It's not like, I'm going to teach you the right, again, that comes to like, what is the right way compared to what, related to what, right? Like, again, that comes to context. Like, well, in this context, it's this, and in that context, it's that. So again,
Yeah.
like, how do we? Again, I think it's more relatable to share the things that you do well, and in a way that someone can then say, "Oh, Micah does it this way. I like what he does, but I want to do this other thing a little bit differently," and it gives you the permission to say that,
Yeah.
right? So that's really fascinating to hear that parallel.
Yeah. So true.
And then, so I would imagine you've got the course, which now you're making me think about courses, which I had sort of dismissed a long time ago because a lot of what I thought was influenced a little bit by Seth Godin, who created courses, and he found like he would get 30% of people that would actually finish the course, and the course creators would say, "Seth, that's amazing," and he was like, "That's terrible. 30% is terrible, right?" So, and I think there's that, but I think the points that you bring out is offering it to people
Yeah.
in a way that relates to where they're at. And maybe they
Yeah.
don't, you shot 50 hours, maybe they need 20 hours and they're good to go, right? They don't need all 50.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I am a very distracted student. So if I'm in a class, I'm the guy looking out the window in my own train of thought. And I keep circling back to, like, I think I love to learn. I love learning all kinds of things that I don't know. So in a way, I'm a good student, but I am not a structured, you can't put me on a syllabus student. So I am part of that other 70% who might not finish a course that they bought, but I am always going to come away with two or three good ideas. And there are so many books I haven't finished. I never read them all the way through, but I still left with two or three good ideas. So I think, I don't know what a good number is. 30% to me sounds, going from start to finish sounds like a very good number, because I do think that the other 70% are still a subset of the general population. These are people who nevertheless committed to give time and money to something.
Right.
So they have, maybe you are not the course that made them into an artist, but maybe you did something that inspired them to take a step towards this thing. And who knows when that pays off? Who knows how it makes them more, maybe it makes them more serious. Maybe it makes them think, maybe they just didn't like what Seth Godin did, or they don't like what Nishant did with tiny people, but they like the idea of having a course. So there's so many different ways that, like, what I come away with, is a general respect for the fact that not only do you think I am worth your time, you think I'm worth a certain amount of money. So I think there is a general level of respect I have for that. And then I put it at the same level as a New Year's resolution. Like, New Year's resolutions fail all the
Yeah.
time. But who knows? Like, if you make them every year, maybe one year you do fulfill them.
Yeah, that's a good point too, to bring out that maybe you were the midpoint between doing something and something else. And and you ask them, well, how did you end up where you're at? Like, they would never remember you, but doesn't matter.
No,
Doesn't matter.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the beginning of my course, one of the videos I tell people that what I'm trying to think of this is like, being a guidepost. I'm not trying to, like, the Indian attitude towards teaching, which I grew up with, is that of a guru who tells you exactly what's what, and he is the most learned person. And I think this is where my imposter syndrome would kick in from, that I am not that guy. But the more I learn, the more I understand that you don't learn necessarily because someone has all the answers. You learn from them, or you want to learn from a certain person, just like you like the art of a certain person, not because it's the greatest art in the world, but you relate to it for some reason. It works for you. And the same for teaching. So one of the first things I say in this course is that we're all on our individual creative journeys. And I am not here to take charge of yours. I am not here to for you to make your journey all about me and my style and what I do. I'm just here to maybe walk with you for a little while. How long is depends on both of us, and maybe point out some interesting things to you that maybe you like just as much as I do. And then you go on in your journey and I go on in mine. And we're not here forever.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Thinking about time too, like if you have limited time, people are going to be efficient about what they take away and what they leave, right? Just like you said.
Hmm.
So I think that's good to remember. And, expecting 100%, there's going to be some completionists who, oh, I started now. I have to check all the boxes or I'll never sleep, right? They're going to be there. That's like
Yeah, and I don't
1%.
know how I feel about that. I don't think that's always a positive way
No, I
to
don't think so
approach
either.
the
Yeah.
learning job.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it becomes a burden, right? Instead of a joy.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that's really interesting. And how do you relate the course with the book? Because you said the book, it's not like maybe is a little bit broader to some degree.
Yeah.
Like talk about that and the
Yeah.
relationship.
So when I was lucky enough to be approached for this book, uh, Quarto Publishers contacted me and asked if I would be interested in writing a book to share my style of art and how I learn. And um, my first instinct was to say no, because, like I said, I'm not a very structured student. So I'm not the guy who buys how-to books and learns from them. I learn in my own way. So my first instinct was maybe I'm not the best person to write a book like this. But they convinced me. They told me maybe the job is to write a book that even someone like you would read. And I thought, okay, that is a challenge, and I
Yeah.
want that challenge now. I want to figure out what is the kind of book that even someone like me would read. And me being somebody who's distracted, somebody who, when I get a book, a book with pictures, for example, when I was growing up, we would get the Reader's Digest at home. I would go through it first all the way very quickly, just flip all the pages from back to front and stop at all the cool images. And then maybe I would think about which chapter I want to read or which story I want to read inside it. I don't go from A to Z, I just hop around, especially with books that don't have a fixed narrative. And so that's the book I decided I wanted to write. I want to write a book so that you can open to a random page one day, and even if you have 1 minute, you come away with something in that 1 minute. And if you choose to read it A to Z, you get something. If you choose to go hop and skip in your own little trajectories, then you should also be able to get something. And that's the book I tried to write. So again, I don't want to write a how to book. The book I want to write is why everybody should have a sketchbook. I think a sketchbook is a visual journal of your life. And I think everybody should have a journal. And everybody, in some level, understands that when you try to write, especially a journal, you're talking to yourself. It's a private space. And that conversation is of value, even if you're not a professional writer, even if you're not a beautiful writer. Talking to yourself, writing to yourself has value. Similarly, a sketchbook has value even if you're not good at drawing, even
Yeah.
if you never intend to become an artist. A sketchbook is a conversation with yourself outside of words and language, without letting the politics and the messiness of words get in the way of your thought process. It's a way to see your world and to see the lines and the shapes and the colors that make it up, and then to bring it into your mind and then to translate it through your hand and the tool of your choice onto the page. And this business of input and translation and output is a very beautiful human thing to do. And sometimes, if you're really in the flow of it, you can do it without any words getting in the way at all. And I think there's a level of beauty in that. I read something about the French philosopher Derrida. He said that every statement is a lie. Everything you say is said by you according to the meaning of the words that you have in your mind. But whenever somebody hears it, they have their own meanings to those words, which are maybe subtly different from you. So anything you say to them is not what you intended to say to them. And therefore, every statement is a lie. And words are all we have, but words are not very good at doing this job of meaning things. So I think maybe if we all had sketchbooks, we would understand where words fail, and we would understand that there is a world outside of language, which is becoming difficult in an age of social media and texting. There is so much now that instantly becomes words and language. Everything we process, seeing something absolutely incredible and we're at a loss for words, And we think that if we can't express it in words, it's not a real feeling. But being an artist and being a writer who is now an artist, I have come to appreciate how much of the world exists outside of language. And so the point of this book is that everybody should make sneaky art. That's the title of the book, Make Sneaky Art. And everybody should have a sketchbook that helps them express themselves. That can be a private thing that you don't even need to show anybody. Who cares how you draw? It's nobody else's business. And why that would be such a good thing for us as individuals, but also us as a collective species.
So it sounds almost more like a philosophy of sneaky art than anything
It
in a lot of
is.
ways. Yeah.
Very much. So it's not just Tiny People is just one chapter in this book. The rest of this book is about the basic ideas that I have for how you can build a sketchbook habit. What can help you to draw every day and have something that fulfills you.
That sounds really cool. And I can see now how they would overlap well, like a little tiny bit of the Tiny People in the book, but the book is a lot more than the course in that sense. So you could purchase both, and both would be really useful. I would guess, the Tiny People might be the spark to get you started, and then the book could then expand on, well, where else could I apply this sketchbook? Or it could go the other way, right? Where you start with this idea and then you specifically want to do Tiny People, and then you do the course to get that depth, right? So it works both directions.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's, it expands just the way my art practice also expanded. It started with trying to draw people, learning to draw people, and so drawing them tiny, drawing them very quickly. But how it grew, this is what I explain to people, that it started with me thinking sneaky art meant that I am being sneaky, trying to make something. But the definition of that word, of this phrase, has changed in my mind the more I started drawing. I moved very soon from Chicago. I moved to a small town in Wisconsin called Eau Claire. And for a moment, I thought, what am I going to find here? It's not Chicago. It's not a big city of the world. I'm not going to find these iconic landmarks. Where is the art now? How do I draw something? How do I keep this practice going? And I realized very soon, from trying to draw every day, this is the new definition of sneaky art in my mind, that art is everywhere. Beautiful things are everywhere, in ordinary places, on ordinary days, featuring ordinary people doing ordinary things of daily life. It's our job, the artist's job, the human's job, is to find that art, to be able to see it. And so the art is sneaky in the sense that it's right there, hiding in plain sight. And it needs you to cultivate the mindset and be ready with the tools in order to see it, and in order to translate it, and to share it and express it. So that's what this is what the Make Sneaky Art of this book is. It's not that I think everybody should be sitting in corner seats in cafes with a little sketchbook trying to be secretive, but I think there is beautiful art everywhere waiting for you to see it. And that's what I want to help you see.
Wow, that's a really interesting way to think. That's quite a flip too. Almost a 360-degree flip in a way. That moves you away from, I'm trying to think, Stephen King's book on writing. He talks about, like, the way he thinks about writing is he's almost like an archaeologist, where the story exists and he's brushing away the bones, and the bones and the dinosaurs that he's uncovering tell him the story, and then he just writes it down. That's an interesting way to think of it. In a way, that's the way you flipped your description of sneaky art. Is art is there. It's just a matter, are you going to notice and be curious, and then document it with your sketchbook or whatever. That's an interesting way to think of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a very nice analogy. I like that one.
Well, you can have it. It's actually Stephen King, so I guess I don't have a right to give it or take it. But I always found that fascinating. Like, he talked a lot about it in that book. If you read, it's a great book about writing.
Yeah, it reminds me of this quote by, I think it's attributed to Michelangelo, the sculptor, that every block of marble has a statue inside it, and the job of the sculptor is to chip away the unnecessary parts.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to think of it. Interesting. Well, these both sound great. I've already purchased the book. I haven't done the course yet. It's next on my list, and I might do some research and see, is there a course that I need to produce? We'll see. But I think doing drawing is also fun for me, so this might encourage me to do more drawing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there are interesting things that people need to learn from each other. Like, I can write and I can draw, but still the idea of sketchnoting the way you do I stumble, like I keep hitting blocks, and I think those are just little obstacles in my mind that I need somebody to show me the way around. I don't maybe need, I don't need the skill that I need to learn, but I just need to understand approach and ideas, and sometimes that's what we need. And this is why a course helps. Like you don't have to edit yourself down to a very small amount of time, and you don't know what somebody needs. Maybe that I need only 20% of your course, but that's the 20% that's been stopping me up.
Well, and you make 100%, and they decide which 20% makes sense for them, right?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
That's interesting. Cool. Well, and of course you're writing at Substack, and we'll at the end of the show I'll have you give links, and we'll put links in the show notes for people.
Hey, have you ever wanted to create travel sketch notes from an experience you've had, just using the photos and memories you've got? In the Reflective Travel Workshop video replay, I'll guide you through my process for creating travel sketch notes, and then help you reflect on your own photos and memories so that you can make travel sketch notes of your own trips too. This 2-hour recorded video includes a set of downloadable, printable sketching templates and process to kickstart your own travel sketchnoting practice. All this for just $20. Visit rodesign.com/travel to purchase your video and templates today.
I'm really curious now. Let's switch over to tools. I know the answers to some of these things, but what are the tools you like? I think it comes down to like two things. If you consider a sketchbook and a pen, but tell us a little bit more detail about the pens and the sketchbooks and what you've sort of found that works for you at least.
Yeah. So, when I started learning, when I teaching myself to draw, I took a lot of help from the iPad. So firstly, for anybody sketchnoting, for anybody learning to draw, somebody that loves to recreationally make art, I cannot recommend the iPad enough. I think it is a wonderful, wonderful piece of technology. An iPad and an Apple Pencil taught me many, many, many things. I made pretty much all my comics that way for years and years. I made a couple of graphic novels that way. It was backbreaking, literally, but it was so rewarding. And it became this zero cost environment in which I could play with colors as somebody who's nervous around colors. Try it and then undo it, and then try something else and undo. And you haven't quote unquote wasted a drawing in trying out a color. So I think I learned a lot from that, but there was a certain point I reached with it. I hit a wall when I realized that everything I do, and this is me thinking as an artist and a cartoonist trying to move forward, trying to go deeper, everything I do is an Apple Pencil on the iPad screen. So the tactile point of contact is always the same, whether I use a pencil tool, whether I use a marker tool or any other virtual tool, digital brush. So I felt like maybe I'm not using these brushes right because I don't know how they really feel. I need to understand the tactility of this device in the real world before I use the digital version of it. And if I learn the analog version, then maybe I'll approach the digital brush with more understanding and better skill. So that's when I started drawing with analog devices and painting with brushes again. And this sort of sent me into a journey which meant I pretty much never use digital tools anymore, like hardly ever. So I don't think there is any right tool per se. I think what we have is, so drawing and making art is joy in the process of doing it. It's not about the result, it's about the joy. Just like children paint because with crayons, gripping them tightly and, completely ruining them sometimes, but they are enjoying the act of making this thing and they are not obsessed about what it will look like at the end. But something happens when we, as adults, we grow up, we become results oriented. I'll only do this if I'm good at it. I'll only do it if the result is so and so good. I'll only do it if it makes me X amount of money. So unless the return on investment is worth it, I will not go through this process. And that's not how children think. That is not how an artist should think. Artists should be about process more than result. Especially amateurs and hobbyists. It's about the time you get to spend doing this rather than what it looks like at the end. It's irrelevant. So what tools you use is about what tactile point of contact you enjoy. I, as a writer, as a sketcher, I love how the fountain pen feels against the page. It gives me that little bit of friction, so my line goes a certain way. If I wrote or drew with a ball pen, with a roller ball pen, it would be a completely different line because the resistance and the friction is different. So the amount of little bit of, like, my pen is very smooth, but the little bit of scratchiness it has makes me feel like I have control over my line, and I love how it feels against. It's a joy to draw with it. So this is my tool of choice. It's a Lamy Safari fountain pen, and I like a lot of fountain pens, but this is the one I keep as my workhorse. I keep coming back to it. I'm always using it every day, pretty much for the last 7, 8 years. Yeah, that's the one. Lovely.
This one
Yeah,
right
that's
here.
a beautiful color. Wow.
This is a special edition and came with orange ink, which I'm not using the orange ink, but I did once, and it worked out really well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really nice color actually. So for me, the fountain pen does that. Like, I love how it makes contact with the page. Another funny thing, I started writing with the fountain pen before I started drawing with it. And this has to do with I'm very good at typing. I've been writing stories on my computers for years and years. So I am very fast as a typist. And maybe I'm too fast for my own thoughts. So I can type out a sentence and then reach the end and be like, I don't like it. So every sentence I write, I would edit it 3 times because I needed my thoughts to catch up with the pace of my typing. Writing by hand, drawing by hand, imposes a physical limit to how fast you can go. And in my opinion, as a writer, often the first draft of everything I write is by hand because it allows my thoughts and my writing to be in sync. And the sentence that comes out on the page is usually the third draft of that sentence that I started. It's not something that I write, I type, and then I erase, and then I type again, and then I change again. So it allows me to be more in the flow of writing and constructing thoughts upon thoughts than typing. So writing by hand has given me a lot of joy. Drawing by hand has given me a lot of tactile pleasure and a lot of joy in the process of drawing. And so this is what I recommend to people, that you should find, of course, the page is the other end of the equation. You also have to use the kind of paper that the fountain pen feels good against. Sometimes that means slightly, if you're drawing, it means slightly higher quality paper than the most basic, thinnest paper. But there are things you can find. There is an equation you want to find. I love smooth toned paper. I love vellum paper sometimes for drawing in. I love hot press pages, which are like very smooth. But sometimes the current sketchbook I'm using is textured. So it is cold pressed textured paper. And usually people prefer that for watercolors, but I also love how it feels with the fountain pen nib. So I recommend, the thing about art that I recommend most of all is that we should be excited for the journey. We should be excited to open our horizons, try whatever tools you can get access to, see how they feel, find what feeling gives you joy, and make that central to your art practice, your writing practice, whatever sketchnoting practice. Find the paper that feels good. If you're afraid of ruining things, the right pen for you is the one you're not afraid to use.
Yeah.
The right paper for you is the one you're not afraid to quote unquote ruin. The point is to do a lot. The point is not to think that some tool or some medium is so precious that you should only use it when you're ready for it. Whatever kills the hesitation is the right tool for you to use.
That's a great direction, and I learned that lesson when I did workshops at first. I thought people wanted fancy pens and moleskin notebooks or sketchbooks. And I did the first workshop that way, and then realized as I started to go on the road, people were afraid to draw in these fancy notebooks with these fancy pens.
Yes.
So what I did is I went 180-degree switch, and I went to a ream of printer paper and Flair pens. That was it.
That's it.
Total of like $11.
Yeah.
And it worked great because it was so unpretentious that people were willing to draw on it. And then, if they didn't like it, they would crumple it up, leave them behind. Like, it was so ubiquitous, they could care less about the material.
Whatever it takes for you to think that you are the master of this universe. You cannot be subservient to your own tools. You have to, whether it's a lie you tell yourself or what it is, whether it needs you to change your tools, but you need to feel like you are in control of this. You need to have the confidence to write something, to draw something, and to crumple it up and throw it behind you, knowing that the next day I do it will be better. I think when we become in awe of our own work, I draw something and I think, oh my God, I'll never be able to draw as good as that again. What it means is the next day I'm going to hesitate to start drawing because it won't live up to it. I have a friend who doesn't draw in sketchbooks, who's an amazing artist, but only uses loose sheets of paper because if his idea is that if I have a sketchbook, whenever I turn the pages, it's whatever I did before is going to intimidate me today, and I won't be able. So it's a way of setting himself free. He's found his fix. So we should all find our fix in that way. But the goal is whatever helps you do more, whatever kills the hesitations, whatever means that you do something.
So, having said all that and knowing that each person's unique situation determines their tools, we know you like the Lamy Safari. Is there a go-to notebook? Like if you were pressed, like you have an hour, Nishant,
Sure.
and you need to buy a notebook at the store, and you can go to the store and it's got hundreds of notebooks or sketchbooks, which one would you choose?
Great question. So first, I would choose between two sketchbooks based on the situation. One of them would be something that has helped me to bring color into my drawings as a person afraid of color, is to use a toned paper sketchbook. So I would buy, say, speaking of brands, the most convenient one in most art supply stores is Stillman and Byrne. I would recommend a Stillman and Byrne brown sepia toned sketchbook of your choice of size. But because, somebody told me this when I said I'm afraid of using color, they said, why don't you use brown paper? Because then the first color is already there.
Yeah.
And now you're just adding a second, and it won't be such a leap to add a third. And it has completely transformed my art practice in that way. When it's winter, I get a gray toned sketchbook because, of course, I live in the Pacific Northwest, and it is, I live in Grey Couver, as it is sometimes called, Rain Couver, as it is often called, sometimes described as the wet apple, which it also is. So a gray toned sketchbook is great for the winter months, and then spring and summer, a brown toned sketchbook is lovely. So that's one recommendation. The other one I would say is I would always look for something, I like Moleskine. So Moleskine is one, but there are many, many brands that do this. So I never want to say brand. I want to say size, and I want to say orientation.
Gotcha.
So a 4x6-inch sketchbook, which you can hold basically in the palm of your hand. So a sketchbook which allows you, when you're standing in line somewhere, when you're waiting for your coffee somewhere, I have 2 minutes. Can I make a drawing now? Yes, I can make a drawing now. So a sketchbook that allows you to build a sketchbook habit with 5 minutes or less drawings. And that's a little sketchbook that can always fit in your pocket. You never have to think twice about carrying it. You never have to think about too many tools. One pen, one little sketchbook, and I'm set. I can now be in the business of observing my world and putting it down. I think that's very liberating. It's super empowering. So if I had no other decision to make, just a very quick thing, I will look for the quickest small little sketchpad or sketchbook I can get.
That's interesting you say that too. That was when I did sketchnoting. I had come from a place where I was writing longhand in large line notebooks. And the inversion that I did was I had purchased a Moleskine sketchbook at Barnes & Noble.
Right.
And I didn't know what to do with it. It was too beautiful. And I thought, well, I need to make use of this thing. What if the reason I chose it wasn't that it was beautiful at that point. It was, well, it's really small. I could keep it in my pocket, and I can carry a gel pen in my front pocket, and I don't have to carry bags or anything. I could just take it anywhere I go. And so I took that to the first workshop and used it. And it was great because it was so small. For many years at the beginning of my exploration, I started with those small notebooks, and I still like them, when I travel. Now I use a brush pen, and I play with a mix of brush and gel pen to capture environments in a pocket notebook. Now there's a brand I have to look for it now, and I'll look for a link for it. Little tiny pocket notebooks from Bear and Fig. They make a really small pocket notebook that's even smaller than the Moleskines. I think it might be 3x5 or something.
Yeah,
so it's quite small.
Yeah, there are some that are 3x5, then even 2.5 by 3.5.
Yeah, little tiny ones. So
you know what? Another thing I really like, and this is something I do, and why I hesitate to recommend a brand to anybody is, a sketchbook is also how, you compose your scene upon a sketchbook. And I think it's the same thing for sketchnoting. You are composing and organizing your thoughts based on the structure of the page that you have, whether it's landscape or it's portrait orientation, big or small, square or something else. So every time I finish one sketchbook, the next one I buy is a completely different orientation, because how you the kind of page you have is the page you compose upon, is also how you see your world. If I'm drawing on a very tall portrait sketchbook, the way that I look at my landscape is completely different from if I'm drawing in a long landscape orientation sketchbook. The way the information flows, the way my eyes flow on that page, all of those things make a difference to how I'm regarding this same space that I'm at maybe every day. So it helps us when, drawing is about seeing. Forget what you put down on the page. First, it begins with how you see, not only what, but how you see it and how you interpret it and how you compose it. That changes completely if you change your sketchbook paper size and dimensions.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very wonderful exercise to change these things, to not get bound to one style, and see if it unlocks something in your composition.
And you may even find too, like for me, like certain, like that little tiny pocket notebook, if I travel somewhere, I can take that and 2 pens and I can do environments, I can do food, those kind of things. And it's easy to bring, like the friction is really low because it's in my pocket. But
Right.
if I'm doing like, say I'm gonna do a job and I decide I want to do it analog, I probably would take an A5, right? Because I've got a little more space.
Yeah.
The purpose is to capture information, or if I'm doing for client work, maybe I would choose the iPad because clients always have changes. There's something I'll miss. I'm going to make a
Exactly.
typo, right? So the purpose drives in a way the tool. So you made by
Absolutely.
rotating through these different books in this case.
Yeah.
You would sort of discover, oh, this is really good for this kind of thing in my context. And that's really good for that. So then you have like these collections of different types of books that you find work for you. And so they're ready to go at a moment's notice. So that could be valuable.
100%. Yeah. Like I have 3 sketchbooks, depending on mood and context, that I pick up from my desk.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, this has been helpful and I think encouraging for people to think about sketchbooks and tools in a way that is in context to the way they work. I think that's important. That's why, just because you have the same notebook and pen as Nishant, you have a different experience and you have different environments, and you need to take it in the way that makes sense for you. His tools will not make your work like his, nor should you make that your focus. He's really an inspiration, like you said, a facilitator to do that. So interesting.
Yeah.
The last thing I usually ask our guests on the show is the tips section. So I frame it like this: there's someone listening. They're probably a visual thinker, I would guess, whatever that means to them. Maybe they're stuck in a rut, or they just need a little inspiration from you. What would be 3 things you would encourage them with?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So firstly, something we just spoke about, carry a small sketchbook, something that doesn't intimidate you, something that you're not afraid to whip out with even 2 minutes of free time. You can go from start to finish in the little bit of time you might have in even in a busy day. What I think of as utilizing the slack periods of your day, waiting for a bus, for example, sometimes. So carry a little sketchbook is number 1. Number 2 is you have to give yourself permission to be curious. You have to not disregard your curiosity as silly or pointless. When I go out with a sketchbook, one of the things it does for me, even if I don't draw anything at all that day, is I can feel it in my pocket. So I know that I'm in the business of observing and looking for things that are interesting. Be in the business of activating your curiosity and seeing what your curiosity tells you something about yourself. No matter how you draw, nonetheless, you are learning, this is what I'm curious about. This is what grabs my attention. And so you foster something beautiful about yourself as a human being exploring your landscape. So carry a small sketchbook, number 1. Number 2, always be curious. Number 3 for me is get started as quickly as possible. You need to make your tools in such a way, you need to have your practice in such a way that you don't leave any room for hesitations. Hesitations don't do any good. All they mean is don't do this thing. There is no value to these hesitations. Start as quickly as possible, whatever it takes for you to get pen to paper. As a self-conscious person in public spaces, I started sneaky art out of being self-conscious. I'm still self-conscious. I take commissions and I'm in public crowded spots, but I'm still self-conscious. But these second thoughts and these stray thoughts that stop me from doing things vanish the moment that I touch pen to paper. Suddenly I'm in the zone of making something and now I'm in it. Now those second thoughts don't matter. So what I've learned over time, over the past few years, is I need to close that gap from wanting to draw to starting to draw. As soon as I can go to the other side, I'm fine. And I need to spend less time in this limbo.
Those are great encouragements. I think everyone could benefit from thinking that way, for sure. Well, thank you so much for that. So what would be the place to go to see the stuff you're doing, to find your book, to find your course? Is there obviously we can send people to your Substack, but there's probably other places too. Do you want to share those with us?
Yeah, well, I think the thing I really love is having that inbox relationship with people. So the number one place I send people is always my Substack newsletter, because I think it's lovely to be able to come into someone's inbox once a week and share the things that I'm doing. And it's a good way for them to learn about me. And it's a good way for me to share something about what I want to share without the pressure of saying it all very quickly. Substack is, again, a very consensual relationship that builds over time. So the newsletter is very important. It's something I like to bring people to. It's my best communication space. Of course, you're also free to visit my website, where I have links to my print store. I have links to my course. I have links to all the other things that I'm doing. I try to update it as much as possible, and often I fail. But there are lots of good ways to get in touch with me and see my work. Instagram is where I'm most popular, but Instagram is, of course, the worst way to stay in touch with anybody's work.
Yeah, no kidding.
So if you love my work and you want to see my work, maybe following me on Instagram is the way to ensure that never happens. So, yeah, I come back to newsletter. I think that's been my favorite way to share and to hear from people as well.
And so what's the link? What link should they go to for the newsletter? Because I think that will guide people to everything else, right?
Yeah, it's sneakyart.substack.com.
Okay, great. That would be a great place to start. That's where I started, and I've been following Nishant for, I think, over a year now, a year and a half.
Yeah.
So, which is why when I saw you in my session, like, hey, that's Nishant. Are you the? I think I said, are you the Nishant Jain? And you said yes. What else?
The only one I know. Well,
there may be many in India. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure there must be many. Speaking of sketchbooks, by the way, Mike, this week I made my own sketchbooks for the first time. I made my own journal for the first time. I'm learning how to do binding. And it's been such a joy to work with my hands and to make something like that. So it's been a really good I might never buy a sketchbook again.
Oh, there you go. Well, the interesting thing that if you're making your own sketchbook, you can have it with a mix of white paper.
That's the goal, exactly. Right? So let me show you. This is the sketchbook I made. And I've got all different kinds of paper inside it.
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
The goal is that every time I turn the page, I want a surprise. I want to not know what I'll see, and I want to respond to it in the moment.
That's cool.
So it's allowed me to mix up different kinds of paper, different colors of paper, and then now my job is to meet that challenge.
And I think you did a meetup on Substack where you showed how you did that with a video.
Yeah, so we did this live on with the paying subscribers of my newsletter. We did this on live Zoom sessions. We did 2 Zoom sessions in which I had never done this binding before, and I watched the YouTube video with the attendees, and then we did this process. I think I pricked myself with the needle about 5 times, and so there are like 5 different occasions in these sessions where I just scream out in pain suddenly.
So if you can just come for the pain and
Yeah, you can just come for that. But it's so rewarding. It's simultaneous, like the joy of achievement, but also the joy of creation, knowing that it's going to become something, So I think this is the joy that I want to leave this conversation with, something I think you would share. Whenever I get a new sketchbook or a new journal, this is something I do, Mike. Like I flip through the blank pages. Obviously, there's nothing there, but I flip through them and I imagine in a month or 2 or 3 what's going to be there. Sometimes I think just like that sculptor, just like Stephen King writing about writing, that what I'm doing is I am uncovering what these pages already say. And that the white blankness of this page is infinity. And every line I put on it suddenly gives definition to that infinity into something finite. And I try to imagine what this beautiful journey with this sketchbook is going to bring me. And I think that joy is something we can all have. It's so easily accessible to us.
That's a great way to end things. I can't say it any better. It's amazing. Well, thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate all the work you do, how you are so welcoming and encouraging to people and invite them in the way that you do. I really admire that. And I want to thank you for doing that for the world.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mike. This was such a lovely conversation.
Yeah. For those of you who are watching or listening, it's another episode. Until the next one, talk to you soon.
The Sketchnote Army podcast was created by me, Mike Rohde, and brought to you by Rohdesign Studios. It's produced and edited by Alec Polianis of AMP Creative Studios. The theme music was created by John Schiedermeyer. To support the creation of this show, I invite you to buy one of my books, the Sketchnote Handbook or the Sketchnote Workbook. You can find the books on Amazon or go to peachpit.com and use the code ROHDE40 for 40% off. Please share this podcast with other visual thinking friends, and be sure to leave a nice rating on iTunes or your favorite podcast listening app so others can find the show.